Good evening, everybody. We're back on the speakerphone again tonight because I don't have a conference call phone that works. So we'll try it again like we did last week. We'll use the speakerphone and we'll pass the telephone around and use it as a mic when people share if they want to. So I hope this was a thoughtless week. It's finally a good thing when you do something thoughtlessly. I used to get chastised for that. That wasn't very thoughtful. And I had a lot of fun, of course, because I didn't have to think about this class. Would have been cheating, right? If I thought about this class and got prepared, that would have been cheating. I don't have anything that came to me to add to about thinking. The bottom line is it's never necessary and never productive, in spite of the illusion in this world. And it's a fun thing that we all can play with to discover whether or not that seems to be true in our experience. And tonight's obstacle is having powers other than the one power, or the no power as the case may be. Having any power other than the one power is an obstacle. And all there is consciousness, and consciousness, what is complete, whatever that means, because what is outside of time, so complete and incomplete and before complete and all those verbs don't have any meaning, but nonetheless it's complete. There's nothing happening, nothing changing. There can't be change because change requires time, and what is outside of time. So it's done. It's a done deal. So there's really no power in action. And if what is all there is, there's nothing other than what is that could be trying to have any effect on what is. So there's nothing to be defended against, there's nothing to protect against, there's nothing to hold at bay, there's absolutely no use for power in what is, or in all that is, all there is. There's no use for power. Power is entirely in the mind. And so power is entirely in the dream. So the game for the next week, and I've had fun with this week, and the way this worked is I just started out Thursday knowing that the obstacle was powers other than God, if you will, and started paying attention to my thinking and everybody else's thinking, and they just kept coming to me until I have a pretty good list of powers other than God. I'm holding it up here. You guys on the phone can't see it, but there's 31 of them so far. And these are just big general things. These are not itemized. And I'll put this list up on the website tomorrow morning first thing so that you all can print one out. And what I hope you'll do is, obviously we're not going to stop believing in powers other than God. But I hope you'll start paying attention to what you're giving your power to. And I hope we'll expand this list. It'd be fun to see how big this list is, although let's stay fairly generic. We don't need to name every detail of a thing, but let's see if there's any major areas that are left off this list. A fun thing to play with. part of this is, the object of this is not to change your behavior. The object is not to stop protecting yourself or taking care of yourself or doing whatever it is you need to do because you still believe in these powers. The object of this week is just to identify the extent to which we are still believing in powers that can't possibly be, that can't possibly have any power, if we are who we truly are, rather than this creature within the mind that does seem to be affected by powers. So let me talk about that just for a minute, and then we'll play with the list for as long as we feel like it. If I am spirit, if I am consciousness, and if I know that, if I'm in the spirit, if I'm in the consciousness, then all these 31 things and all their brethren and children and such like have no power over me. Okay? Now, if I think I'm Lee, then they all potentially do, to the extent that I believe they do. Okay? So if I'm thinking I'm Lee and I'm thinking that germs have, the first one is germs and viruses. If I'm thinking I'm Lee and I'm thinking germs and viruses have power to cause disease, then they do for me. Okay? And if I'm aware of who I am, who I really am, then I can't believe that germs and viruses have power, and then they won't have power over Lee. So it works that way. That if I believe they have power, then I'm clearly Lee. If I believe they have power, then I am human. And if I am human and believe that this has a power, then it does. If I'm human and I don't believe it has power, then it doesn't. Okay? That's the way mind works. That's the way the reflection works. But if I know who I am, then none of these powers, in quotes, can have power over the Lee image in the mind bubble, because this consciousness that I am is determining the harmony of the experience of this Lee image in the mind bubble. Okay? Is that clear? Do we get that? Hear what I'm saying? We'll play with it with some of the details. The first one is, as I said, germs and viruses. Now, if I am in anything other than transcendental consciousness, then clearly, germs and viruses certainly do appear to have power in this amongst the 6 billion. And even if I think I'm human, even if I don't particularly believe in germs and viruses, nonetheless they can have power over me just because of the pressure of the belief of the 6 billion. So I have to even if I'm human, I have to actively know that they don't have power. Okay? I have to actively, this is the protective work, slant on the protective work that Joel used to talk about. If I don't want to get sick, I have to actively know that they don't have power, if I believe I'm Lee. Okay? If I know who I really am, then clearly anything that's going on down in that mind bubble can't have any effect on who I really am, and that will tend to be reflected in the mind bubble. So, germs, viruses, epidemics, things like that can't have any power. And if you're protecting yourself against germs, you're giving them power and stating that you're human. And like I saw a gal at the supermarket the other day. They had these little hand wipe things outside, on a little post outside, so that you can. And I wondered, what the hell are those for, you know? And then somebody came along and this gal was telling her boyfriend, no, grab one of those, wipe the, they want you to use that to wipe the rail, the handrail of the cart on which other hands have been and left germs, okay? Now there's a true belief in the power of germs, okay? And I bet that woman who was afraid, who needed to wipe the cart so that she wouldn't catch germs from whoever wheeled the cart around last, I expect she probably has a lot of trouble with disease. I would not be surprised if she wasn't continuously catching something and going to doctors to get rid of it. Okay, on the other hand, medications also can't have any power. So if you're taking medications for anything, you're stating you're human. They can't have any side effects either, by the way. Not only are medications not going to do you any good if you know who you are, but they can't have any side effects either if you know who you are. So they're harmless. And here's a more fun one for those of us who are 12-steppers. Drugs, alcohol, and food have no power. First of all, they can't have any power to do for us what we used to use them to do. They really don't have the power to be an anesthetic. They really don't have the power to get us addicted. They really don't have the power to do anything like that. But only if I know who I am. So the game is, if I'm Lee and I need a drink, then alcohol clearly has power. And if I know who I am, then alcohol won't have any power over Lee. But who I am will probably never tell Lee to have a drink, so the situation won't arise. But if that was the only, if I was out somewhere on a desert island and I was dying of thirst and the only thing to drink there was a bottle of alcohol, I undoubtedly could, if I were in the consciousness, could undoubtedly drink it without any ill effects. Similarly, drugs have no power to addict us, or neither does food to put out the fire, to make us feel good, to do all that stuff. That's if you are afraid of drugs or alcohol or food, or if you're using them to make you feel better, you're clearly human. They all immediately prove that you're human. That's what it's all about. Anytime you give anything a power, or have any fear about anything, or have any tendency to take care of yourself, you're just showing you're human, because the yourself that you're taking care of is the human being. The yourself with the capital S that you really are doesn't need taking care of. Okay? The next one is calories and food groups. That's a fun one. Calories can't make you fat. You can eat as much as you want, or as little as you want. And you can't possibly get fat if you know who you are. This is one I certainly have not mastered. I have to watch my intake with a magnifying glass, or I gain weight. So it certainly, there's very clearly ingrained in me still, deep down inside somewhere, and it's not at a conscious level. I certainly know better, etc., etc. Nonetheless, if I eat, I get fat. And I expect that relates to the fact that I was so overweight when I was a kid, that there's still a piece of me that has that fear, or that belief, or that whatever, or it might just be that there's some judgment left in there, but there's a little piece of stuff down there. So that's one that I do still give power to. Vitamins and minerals have no power. If you're taking vitamins and minerals, you think you're human and you have a body that needs vitamins and minerals, and you think they have power to make you big and strong, or whatever it is. So vitamins and minerals are on my list. Poisons. Nothing can poison me. I can't possibly take something and die from it. Can't possibly do anything and die from it. And then I put down Guns and knives. Guns and knives have no power. And Herb talks about on one of his tapes he talks about, if somebody were to shoot at you, the bullet would appear to miss. If somebody were to stab you with a knife, they'd appear to miss, that if you were in your consciousness, none of that would happen to you. None of that can come nigh your dwelling place if you're in the consciousness. And I've heard both him and Joel say that goes as far as bombs and H-bombs and atomic bombs. If you're in the consciousness, they can't harm you. They won't happen. And that brings us to one of the today type things, terrorists. If you're afraid of terrorists, you're human. Terrorists can't possibly get us. Can't get who we are. And this is a fun list. These things just kept popping up to me. These are all the things, you hear about them in the news and everything. It just goes on and on what people are afraid of. We're afraid of other nations and dictators and the power they have and the armies that they'll unleash and the effect that's going to have on us. That can't happen. We think churches have power. We think the Catholic Church has the power to, what do they call it when they cast you out and you have to go to hell? Excommunicate you. We think the Pope has the power to excommunicate us. The Pope has power over how God treats us. We think automobiles have power to kill us, accidents to kill us. Oh, we think weather and climate have power. We think a bad climate can make us sick. We think that cold weather can give us colds or the flu or pneumonia. We think that climates can cause all sorts of problems. And we think, look at the next thing on the list is hurricanes and tornadoes. And look at the game that's been going on down in Louisiana for 3 years. Ever since the news media hyped people up and got them scared enough to cause that hurricane disaster 2 or 3 years ago in New Orleans, we've had nothing but year after year now of more and more bigger and stronger hurricanes striking places because the media have hyped up the belief in it to the extent that the country believes much more strongly in the power of hurricanes, and so of course we're seeing them a lot more. So the media has stirred up a nest of hurricanes. And Joel demonstrated that hurricanes don't have power. I haven't verified this myself, but I've heard people who have done the work said that in all the time that Joel lived in Hawaii, a hurricane never struck Hawaii. And there's tapes that Joel talks about, he and a group of people nullifying tidal waves that were coming and they knew when they were going to hit and where they were going to hit and everything, and then they went and looked and they seemed to have just disappeared because Joel and a group of people had gone to work on tidal waves. So hurricanes and tidal waves certainly don't have any sort of power. And I threw in earthquakes because we're in California. Earthquakes have no power. Now that's the most powerful thing in the world, isn't it, an earthquake? But they don't have power to harm us. They can't level your house if you know who you are, if you know where your house is. Age. Age has no power. Age can't debilitate you. Age can't cause you to lose any faculties. Age can't disempower you. Age can't do anything to you. Age has no power. Unless, of course, you think you're that body that's getting older. If you know you're eternal, you'll have an entirely different experience, and you may appear to be maturing but not aging. People in positions like bosses have no power over you. Joel has another one that I have a little bit later, but let's do it now. Bosses and customers. Customers have no power. Customers don't have power to deny you the sale or to give you the sale. Bosses don't have the power to hire you or fire you. That's all just in the beliefs and the appearance. If it's your sale, it will happen regardless of your or the customer's intent. If it's your job, you will get it regardless of the your boss's intent, your future boss's intent. Your boss has no power to fire you. If it's your job, you'll be the one that survives the longest. It's entirely dependent on whether or not it's your sale, whether or not it's your job, if you're in the consciousness. Financial trends. There's no power in financial trends. Now, I know that we have a great financial crisis going on now, and yet, here we sit, we're all well-fed, we're all well-lived. I see absolutely no signs of financial crisis anywhere I go. The meetings are as full. The basket this morning that they passed around in the morning meeting brought in $112. You know, I was over at CPK and the lines were waiting at CPK Tuesday for lunch. You know, there is absolutely no evidence in my eyes, in my experience, of any sort of a financial crisis except people talking about it. I see no physical evidence of it. I see no impact of it. And that perhaps is just my consciousness, but I don't see it. So there is no financial crisis, or financial crisis has no power. You know, it's a label. And similarly, the stock market and financial institutes and banks have no power. You can't get bad loans, you can't get good loans, you can't have loans withheld from you, you can't, you know, your savings can't disappear. None of this stuff, or if it does, it just means that your abundance is going to come somewhere else. The details of what's going on out there cannot affect your supply or your abundance if you're in the consciousness. If the stock market completely collapsed and you had a portfolio that went to zero, that just means that it's going to be over here now. It's going to have some other thing that's going to happen that will provide for you if you're in the consciousness, because it's not possible that your supply can diminish. And if you have now, that's a reflection of your consciousness, and regardless of what the government thinks about the financial situation, your consciousness is intact and will continue to produce your supply at the level that you have it now. So, you know, none of this is possible. Thieves, robbers, can't take anything that's yours. Murders, rapists, can't come near you. They have no power. Thieves, robbers, murderers, rapists, anything like that, any sort of felons have no power. The government has no power. The U.S. government has no power over you, including the IRS. They can't possibly affect your supply. I mean, you may well do like Jesus told them to do and render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I'm not suggesting you don't pay your taxes. But the government has no power. They can't take away anything that's yours. Can't affect your supply. Can't do anything to you. Won't. I mean, if I think I'm Lee, now the IRS could come get me and audit me and take me through all sorts of stuff. But if I know who I am, that won't happen. That's not going to happen. Courts have no power. Judges have no power. Juries have no power. And Joel has a real nice tape about that, where he says, if you go to court and you think that the court has power and the judges have power and the jury has power, these aren't his words, but essentially he says you're at a coin toss now, because they all have perfect possibility of being wrong and erring and getting the verdict wrong, and you're just at the, you know, it's a coin toss whether you'll get justice or not. He says, don't go to court expecting justice from the court or the judge or the juries, because they're only human and they'll mess up, and you don't know what will motivate them, so you can't go there and expect to get justice from them. You go to court expecting God's justice to be reflected there, and you'll have an entirely different experience. So if you think courts and judges and juries have power, you're human. Lawyers, if you think lawyers, and I caught myself this morning thinking, talking as if I believed that lawyers had power, just because they tickle me. Lawyers have no power, in spite of what they appear to be doing to all of us. Organs, your heart has no power, your heart stopping has no power, your blood has no power, your stomach has no power, there is no power in any of your organs, there's no power in your body. Your body doesn't have the power to get sick, or to get well, or to age, or to do anything at all. Keep the faith, I'm just about done. Lies have no power. I really enjoy letting people lie to me when I know they're lying and not saying anything, because lies can have no power over me. They have power over you. If you're lying, then you're clearly then you're clearly human, and so they have the power to backlash on you, which they will. There'll be a karmic whiplash on you, but lies have no power over me. Neither does the truth. Truth has no power. And finally, words. Just in general, words have no power. And I want you to know that that entire list of 31 things came up without me ever thinking about it. I did not sit down and try to think of things that had power. These all just popped into my head as a result of wandering around for the week, taking notes whenever something popped into my head. So it certainly is true that you don't have to think to do this. So that's my list. That was this week for me. That was the things I noticed. So let's all go out and play. And the real thing to do is especially notice the power. I mean, it's one thing to, and you should do this. Notice all the things that you have power. Notice the things you're accommodating, and notice the things that you're taking care of. You know, keep your eye open for when you're taking care of yourself, but especially notice when you're afraid, because those are the ones that are killing you. Those are the ones that are really tying you down and restricting you. So see, especially when you're afraid. If you're afraid, you think something has power. If you're taking care of yourself, you think something has power. And in other cases where you're just making adjustments, accommodating the powers, that's another case to look for. So let's hear from you. That's all I got.
Lee, it's Rolly.
Okay, Rollies.
What about laws of physics?
How about laws of physics? Do they have power, or do they reflect what is?
Well, they reflect what is, don't they?
Uh-huh. Yeah, Joel talks about, they certainly, laws of physics are a description of a reflection in the material world in mind of what appear to be what I don't know how to call them, but what are laws that in the spiritual creation that what is, okay? So if we see things that healing can't touch, or like Joel says, that no matter how many practitioners get together and how hard they'll work, they'll never vary the tides by 1 second, okay? Now he could stop tidal waves, but he couldn't make the tide go out 1 second earlier. And his entire group could dissolve a tidal wave, but they couldn't make the tide come in 1 second earlier, okay? So tidal waves, the way planetary work, laws of physics, are a material reflection of some law in what is my way of thinking about that. And of course, anything that I say isn't going to be quite right, because what goes on in the spiritual world is indescribable. But my story is that physical laws reflect laws in the spiritual nature of what is, and but they don't have power. They're just statements about how things work. That help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Lee,
Yeah.
give me an example of what you meant when you said accommodating a power.
Well, like watching my weight. It's clearly accommodating the fact, I'm accepting the fact that for me, food calories seem to put fat on me. And I'm aware of that, and I'm aware of the fact that it's nonsense, and yet it continues to appear to happen, and I'm still human enough that I don't want it to happen, and so I accommodate that and watch what I eat. But for instance, I don't take vitamins or minerals because I'm very clear that they have no effect. I haven't used them, taken any. I eat poorly and haven't taken vitamins or minerals in 15 years because that's very clear to me I don't need them. Okay? So I'm unaccommodating with respect to vitamins and minerals, and I'm accommodating with respect to Haagen-Dazs. Joe Michael, grab the phone so they can hear. Let's get the mic going. Just use it like a mic.
Ready button?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, it's on now.
Yeah.
Joe Michael, is there progress, or I know the words progress or levels, when the expression, if I know who I am, in my imagination, there can be a concept, unfortunately, of full-blown realization. And I can imagine that at full-blown realization, nothing can touch this, or what I might call me. But I can only think of knowing who I am in a momentary. I might be walking down the street and appear to be walking down the street and be very much in touch with something that has to do with silence and very deep. And then I see in the distance somebody pulling a gun. I would imagine that I would revert back to being human rather quick.
Yeah, you could.
So I'm just talking about, are you talking about full-blown realization or gradations? I know it's difficult to...
No, it clearly is a gradation type thing. There's two things going on here. First of all, people like Robert and Ramana Maharshi were full-blown, fully realized. And yet Robert had Parkinson's and Ramana had appeared to have cancer. But they didn't. And it was absolutely clear to them that they didn't. And there was no healing work going on. There was no need to do healing work going on. And they were absolutely clear that that wasn't them. And so it was irrelevant. So there's a level of consciousness where it's all irrelevant. And nobody cares what happens, okay? Now, the other thing is that Joel was a very high guy, but he went through like several stages during the, you hear, if you listen to his tapes, if you listen to all of his tapes and really study him, you hear about many times, 3, 4, 5 different times he withdrew for 3 or 4 months and went through what he called an initiation, which is really a rising to another level. So Joel had an incremental process of rising to different levels of consciousness, so certainly it was an incremental step-by-step thing for him. And my experience is that it's just very, very gradual. Mine's a continuous, my process is a very continuous one of deepening and deepening and deepening and deepening and deepening. And as that happens, my experience of life, the difference is that my life is, I haven't had many disharmonies for a long time. But what I noticed, for instance, is that whereas there used to be 4 or 5 people that delighted me, there are now 30 people that just delight me, just to see them, okay? I mean, I just see them and I'm delighted, okay? And that's the kind of change I'm seeing now, and that's clearly a level of an indication of a deepening consciousness. And the other test is reactions. Where do you react? Robert would see the man with the gun, and Rajneesh, Bhagwan used to say, if you see a man, if a man comes into your house and takes the wallet out of somebody else's pocket and goes out the door, have you seen a thief? Depends on you. Robert wouldn't see a thief. Robert would observe somebody taking the wallet out of somebody's pocket, and there would be no tagging of this and judgment and tagging and labeling, and we wouldn't have a thief there. The thief would not have occurred to him. Okay? So if you saw a man pull a gun on somebody, it could have no reaction in you at all, or it could frighten you and drop you immediately into your humanhood, and it's just where you're at working. And I see it as a very gradual process. It's what are the words in the AA book about the spiritual experiences? There's the
educational variety.
The educational variety, yeah. Well, this is sort of an experiential rather than an educational variety, but there's an experiential process that goes on, and it's reflected in your life. Your life gets more joyful and healthier and whatever. My experience is that it's reflected in my life.
But even, and again the words, but where I am, I seem to get that no matter what comes my way, the best way to deal with it, even though I am where I am, is to reach for the consciousness in ways that we talk about.
Absolutely. That's the only thing you can do. It's never effective to approach the problem at the level of the problem. It can't work because you're dealing with the symptom, you're not dealing with the cause. The cause is always my consciousness, okay? The only cause for anything that I have an opportunity to deal with is the content of my consciousness. Either because I believe something or fear something, or because I am doing nothing about it and by default thinking I'm human, I'm getting the consciousness of the 6 billion. But the 6 billion will fill my consciousness if I'm not filling it, okay? So whatever I experience is the content of my consciousness, and if I'm dealing with it at any other level, I'm not being effective. Who else?
Sit down. This is one that I struggled with for years and years, and it just clicked recently when you were talking about the earthquake, and suddenly I saw that if there's an earthquake happening, that if I'm in the consciousness, I'm not in Adele. It's not Adele who's in this. It's a watcher of the dream. And so it's inconsequential. But as long as there's a belief that it has consequence, that it matters, then I'm still in the dream. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, oh, I've been listening to that for years.
Sure.
And so but the real trick is that I wanted to change to believe in something or not believe in it, so the picture changed. Mm-hmm. And it can't do that if that's why I want it to happen, because I'm still thinking the picture has power.
Well, the fact that you want it to change means you're human.
Yes. And that was just a huge...
Wanting to change is an obstacle.
And that was the big key, that's inconsequential. Mm-hmm. Because I am not this Adele in this dream.
Right, Adele's within you.
Yes.
You're not in Adele, Adele's in you.
And there's no my body for it to happen.
Big point to get people.
Yeah.
You are not in your body. Your body is in you. And so is everybody else's body in you. Yeah, that's the fun game.
It's amazing how long I've been listening to that for years. And then it was like, wow. And
And it's like, oh, of course.
it's just
Duh! I mean, you hit your head and you've been unable to hear it for 10 years, and then, duh! Yeah, sure, it's always that way. When you can hear it.
And that the illness thing, about, I don't know, 7 years ago or something, I stopped having flu shots just to practice. I used to get the flu about 10 times a year, and I haven't had the flu since.
Right.
However, I've noticed that other things have come up, so there's all, I know that there's still a belief in those other things. So viruses, I don't believe have any power anymore. However, there's still the belief that other things have power. So there's just another place to practice, which is, it's okay.
Yeah, and the game is just to see these. I say again, the goal of this is not to change anything. Don't change anything. See it clearly and watch it change. When you're when you really know that vitamins and minerals have no power, you will just stop taking them. You just be going to the store one day to fill up your bottle and you won't do it. Okay? When you really know that viruses don't have power, you just won't get the flu shot that year. I mean, it's not that you will decide to give something up and to prove a point, because if you're giving something up to prove a point, you're human. Okay? And you lose. So, the game always, all of these games, the game is to see it clearly. And when I say clearly, I mean to the bottom of your kids all the way down to your toenails. See it clearly. When you absolutely see it clearly, you'll just stop. And why would you spend money on vitamins when you know clearly that they have no power? Yes.
It's Christy. Can I just talk loud this way?
Yeah.
This one for this thing's not having power over me. I'm very, very human. I'm really aware of that. And there's a thing that I've been doing, like when we did that weekend on supply, and my consciousness reflected supply, and I realized that when I needed to, one of the areas of supply that was always good with me is when I'm willing to learn, a teacher always appears, and that is my supply, and that's a reflection of what is. And for instance, I'm having the same dental problem that we healed while I was in the Philippines. It's back again. And the best I can do is watch it and know it. Like, I believe that the bacterial infection has power. What I've been trying to do, and I don't know if it maybe is just like a logical workaround because I'm a thinker, is that right now I say to myself that right now I have this Advil, and I just say, well, maybe for now I need, as like a sort of crutch, I know the Advil has no power mentally. And at some level, the Advil has no power. I know that the bacteria really has no power. And as I take it, I just say, for now, to sort of appease the Christy part of me.
Sure.
I say, this is the way I have to manifest that healing right now.
Yeah.
And that's about the best I can do. And then I judge not by appearances, judge righteous judgment, take it, and just keep moving. And that's about the best I got.
Perfect.
Okay, I just wondering if there's a big inherent, but I mean, that's about as good as it gets for me.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, girl. Yeah. I did that for years. I used to take aspirin as an affirmation that I didn't want to get sick. Because that was the best I could do.
Knowing that the sickness is an illusion, and so is the aspirin.
Yeah, and nonetheless, because of all the pressure of all the beliefs in the world and the 6 billion people and such like, even affirmations have no power, right? Except they do if you're in this world. And so there's nothing wrong with an affirmation if you're in this world. And what will happen is they will get fewer.
Yeah. I've noticed, my need lessens a little bit, but I also find for me it's a bit a giant bit of the kid work for me.
Sure.
Because this is something I can easily rip. I read my own script with it. Oh, it's not manifesting, and I'm failing. I'm wrong. I didn't get it right again. I really made a conscious commitment to I don't have to torture myself with this work. I can torture myself with other things.
Sure, there's plenty of stuff out there.
Yeah, I don't have to really go out of my way.
Yeah, that's another thing.
natural.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's another thing. If take care of your kid first. I'm saying you're looking at stuff to see. If you're taking care of yourself, it means you're human. Yeah, but if you have a kid, then you're clearly human.
Yeah.
And you're not done with your kid work, and so take care of the kid first. Get the kid work done. So don't make your kid
suffer. We're spiritual now.
Yeah, suffer. Yeah, right. None of that. Yeah. Don't be above anything.
Yeah.
Head in the clouds, feet in the mud. That's the human condition. Head in the clouds, feet in the mud. I hope you guys fatten up this list. Huh?
I've already thought of some.
Oh, good. Yeah, write them down and bring them next week, or email them to me or something. Huh? Yeah, God is a good one. Yeah, God has no power. Keep that in mind. That certainly is a good one. I'll put that on the list before tomorrow. Yeah, I said churches, but didn't say. We know the Pope doesn't, but neither does God. Yeah. Yeah, I hope this list expands. I think it's a fun list. And you can see that I'm really being general. I'm saying the government, and we don't need to beat up the Supreme Court and the legislature and the House and the Senate, and we don't need to get down into the details. But God is a great example, a big arena that got left out. Yes.
I was taught that parents are a kind of special case, maybe potentially more powerful than bosses and managers, which were on your list. And I think that I'm still more influenced by the parent-child relationship than I am about...
Can't hear you.
I think that I'm still more influenced about parent-child relationships than I am about employment relationships. Do you think I'm exaggerating?
No, I mean, you're reporting what your experience is. Do you think your parents have power? Or are you...
Yes.
Okay, then that certainly is another example. And it's a natural one because when you were a baby, the appearance certainly was that they were God. They had the power to, so to speak. They appeared to have the power to grant or withhold everything from you. So, I mean, there's a long experiential establishment of the fact that parents have the power of God over you. So it's not surprising that they have a lot more, that they linger longer than bosses and things, which didn't show up until, teachers probably are still harder for you than bosses. Yeah, it's natural. But even parents having the power to grant or withhold food from their children is not true. And if the consciousness that the child comes in with is high enough, it will not be it will not be possible for a parent to withhold from it. Of course, if the child had that level of consciousness when it came in, it would not come into parents that would be capable of withholding because it's here for a whole other purpose. But the fact is that even at the level of infancy, parents do not have the power to grant or withhold from the child, although it appears to be that way. You'll discover that mothers compulsively feed their kids, there's no power there. That's all an illusion. Everybody's doing their job, they're playing the role they came in to play. At the appropriate level of consciousness that they're playing at.
me?
Yes.
It's Jessica.
Hi, Jess.
Hey. I could be wrong, but I think I heard this. I dug out this old tape of Joel's called Impersonalization Illustrated, and the other side is the Unconditioned Mind. And I could have sworn on there he said, don't look for the problem in the person's consciousness. He says the problem is not in their consciousness, it's in the carnal mind, but the carnal mind really doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He was talking about there's no cause for anything. He says, so don't go looking for the cause in consciousness. And do you remember anything him talking about that? Because I know he also said something on this tape that's a little bit different than what Herb was saying, because when Herb was talking about when you're going into the silence and you're bringing, your Aunt Fanny or whomever, your grandmother, in with you to that place, to go into the silence. Joel on this tape is also saying, don't do that. Don't bring the person, don't bring a name, because you fasten the problem to them. So I just wanted to hear you comment on what I just brought up.
Well, Joel certainly does say what you said on that earlier tape. He was very much stressing impersonalization, and his point of impersonalization is that every problem, that all the problems are in human consciousness, not in the individual consciousness, okay? But if there were no problems in any individual consciousness, then there wouldn't be any problems, because human consciousness is nothing but the aggregation of all the individual consciousnesses, okay? So in fact, the problem is in the individual consciousnesses, to the extent that they have picked up what universal human consciousness is broadcasting. Does that make sense to you?
I'm sorry, my cell phone just buzzed, and so I was reaching for it to turn it off real quickly. I didn't hear the last part of what you said. I'm sorry.
Different people at different levels and with different histories and different experiences and different stuff they brought in with them pick up on different, attached to different false beliefs that are in human consciousness, okay? So in that sense, they're a part of the individual consciousness. My previous statement was that, in fact, there is no such thing as universal human consciousness. There's just all the individual consciousnesses broadcasting. So if there were no false beliefs in individual human consciousness, there'd be nothing broadcast. So Joel was especially trying to make the point that he's really trying to help people impersonalize, in the sense that, well, the other thing is that in the sense of who they are, who they really are, it's not in their consciousness, okay?
Yeah.
That, none of these beliefs that still seem to be lingering here and there in me are in who I really am. That's just entirely in the human sense, okay? And there is no human consciousness in the sense that it's all part of the dream. And there is no Lee consciousness in the sense that he's part of the dream. Nonetheless, we're talking about this game we're playing. Herb often gets off, and he does. Joel has to be right about not taking the person into your not taking the person and their problem into your consciousness when you're doing a healing thing. That has to be the right answer, because the problem is not with them, the problem is in your consciousness. And Herb's really very clear about that in some cases, but in other cases he's apparently led or affected by his class or whatever, and he talks about bringing people into your consciousness and talks about that kind of thing as if it's something to do. But he says very clearly in I don't know, the 86 or 87 or 88 work, that the problem is in my consciousness. I believe that they have a problem. If somebody comes to you with a problem, what they're doing, the solution, the correct approach that I see and work with is, if you bring me with the problem, then I look at it as you trying to get me to believe you have a problem. And I immediately have to rise above that and not accept that. I have to immediately know that you don't have a problem. And the way I do that is by realizing who I am. And if I realize who I am, then it's very clear that you're me too, and that you can't possibly have that problem because there is no such thing as a problem in spirit, okay? So leaving you outside is what I have to do is know who I am, not who you are. Because if I don't know who I am, I can't know who you are. So the answer is always to know who I am. And like Joel says, you start with God. God is this, or I am this, and you work there. Does that help any?
Yeah.
They do talk inconsistently, both of them. Sometimes it depends on the class they're talking to, the level of consciousness of the class they're talking to, and sometimes it just simply depends on the point they're trying to make. Herb especially is very good at coloring the story to make the point, but then he'll often go back later, like in the next class, and clean himself up a little bit.
Well, and Robert also said at a certain point, I heard him on a tape saying there is no consciousness. Silence is all there is. So ultimately, in the absolute.
Yeah, I remember Rajneesh, when I was in India, the day before he went into silence. He didn't say he was going to go into silence, but he essentially told us that because he came out one day and he was smiling and he said, I feel very complete now. He says, I have now contradicted everything that I have ever said, so they can't possibly make up a Bible out of me. So his goal was to explicitly contradict everything he himself had said, so that nobody could write a gospel. And then the next day he went into silence because he felt free. So don't pay any attention to what those guys say. Smell the rose. It's the fragrance that counts. Doesn't matter what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's especially true of Herb. It's the consciousness that he, even listening to his tapes, listening to his CDs, you get immersed in a consciousness.
Yeah, I can feel it.
That's tangible. I'm going to say that's tangible, okay? And that's why we listen to Herb, not to learn about the Holy Ghost and the 7 levels of stages we have to go through and yada, 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 and mystical marriages and, all this amazing way he has of talking about all this stuff. We don't listen to Herb some of you may, but I don't listen to him. I listen to him in spite of his vocabulary, in spite of his language. But the fact is that I feel his consciousness, and that's what I'm there for. And sometimes I may wonder, when he's saying something, I may wonder what it is he's trying to say. Why is he using all these words? What's the point he's trying to convey? And back out of the vocabulary. But you have to do that with any teacher. You have to back out of the vocabulary and into the consciousness.
Osho said that.
Can I ask you something that's not directly related to this subject we're on right now?
You can ask anything you want. I don't know what answers you'll get, but...
Okay. Because I'm just realizing I'm back and forth seesawing on part of me, like I feel that message of going to the silence, that really, that's the only answer there is, ultimately. Yep. That's the answer for everything.
Yep.
And with regard to healing, And yet I find myself, there's something where I can surrender and accept what I'm going through, and the body has to go through, like I talked to this weekend, this body has to go through what it has to go through. It's the thinking about it that's the problem. Correct? Am I correct on that?
Yep, so far.
And so, but then, okay, and I know going to the silence is the answer, and that's where the healing takes place. But then I find the body will scream at me at different times, and then it's like, but I want to be healed.
Yep, that's the problem.
The problem is I want to be healed.
Absolutely. I mean, and what's wrong with that? I mean, when you're in pain, if you're in enough pain that it drags you into your humanhood, then of course you want to be healed. And so that's when you call and ask for help, hopefully. And
well, I did. That's the other thing. I was on your guys' list, and then I was getting better. And then last week I got pulled into a black hole, and then I came out of it. And I was better, and then I started hurting again.
Yeah.
and part of me feels like I shouldn't keep asking for help.
Yeah, I know, and that's a problem. And here's the deal. First of all, you can't heal yourself. It's very difficult to heal yourself because by the time you, as you have just observed, by the time you recognize that you need a healing, you've already lost the healing consciousness, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you're already in it. So there's problem number one. So you have to ask for help if you want help. The other thing is, and this is really true, the more you ask for help, the bigger favor you're doing us, because it is when you ask for help that we practice, and that practice is for us. So when you ask for help, you're asking for us to work on our own consciousness, okay?
Okay, well, I'm going to put an email back into you tonight.
Good, yeah.
Then.
Let me finish, though. If you ask me for help, you're asking me to work on my consciousness, not your body, okay? So it's a gift to me to ask me to work on my consciousness, all right? Now the other thing is, we're all pretty new at this, and so we don't have a lot of, we're not having miraculous instantaneous healings very much. And so the more you write to us and tell us, hey, I haven't got success yet, hey, I haven't had a release yet, I keep telling people, hold our feet to the fire, make us work until we get embarrassed by the fact that we're not helping you and buckle down and try harder. And if I buckle down and try harder, what that means is that I'm trying harder to lift my own consciousness, okay? Again, I'm not trying harder to heal you. I'm trying harder to lift my own consciousness to the height that you get pulled up to it and hence have a healing, okay? So the harder you make me work, the bigger personal favor you're doing to me. So if you would all address asking the healing group, if you would look at that from that viewpoint, the more you ask for help, the bigger favor you're doing us, because you're asking us to heal our consciousness. It's not you. So hold our feet to the fire, but nobody does it. They all feel silly after 3 or 4 days. And I think most of the people that are on the mailing list got that letter from Joel that he sent to the talking about the tuberculosis case that he had, where he worked on it every day for 6 months. He wrote her a letter every day, sometimes 10 and 20 pages every day for 6 months before he broke his first TB case. So if we don't get it done in 3 days, I don't feel bad about that at all. I mean, that's 3 days that we've worked on our consciousness, and maybe we'll learn to break some of these things after we work on it for 6 months or a year or so, because we didn't come in healing people like Joel did. So that's our real work. This obstacle course stuff is fun games to play, and it's good to have the clarity and such like, but our work is developing the healing consciousness, and it's for us that we're doing it. We're not trying to heal the world. We're trying to heal our own consciousness, which means lifting ourselves. And the way I become a more powerful healer is that I develop the muscle, or whatever it is necessary to attain a higher altitude, because the higher altitude I am at, the more I lift those around me up to me, and when I lift you up to me, then you get the healing. But I'll never lift you higher than I am, so if you get the healing, that means that that I have lifted myself to that consciousness, which is a huge gift to me.
But do we really lift ourselves to that consciousness?
Yes. Through practice, practice, practice.
Letting go, letting go, letting go.
I mean, you don't lift yourself to that level to heal yourself, because if you're doing that, this is the feet in the med case. So you don't lift yourself to that consciousness working on you. But if I call you for a healing, you work towards raising yourself up to heal me. Okay, where you're not invested in the problem.
So aren't we just, like in the morning, 5:30, aren't we just like trying to go into, I know this isn't the word used, but into emptiness, into a place of no mind, into a place of not thinking, but also acknowledging that the Christ or that light or God is within us, or the high self, that we are really our high self, and we're just...
Everybody's doing whatever they're doing. I assume that everybody's probably doing something, I'm sure everybody's doing something different from everybody else, but yeah, we're all meditating, we're all trying to reach as high as we can. But also if we have somebody who's asking for healings, then that gives us some focus there, and if we get an email along about 9 or 10 in the morning that's asking for healing, then I sit down for 5 or 10 minutes there and work, and if the person comes back to my mind at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and do the work then, and every time they come up in my mind, I do the work, okay?
Okay.
So, and if there's nobody asking for help, I still meditate from 5:30 to 6, and then I just strictly try to get into the silence and bliss out, because I happen to dig getting into the silence and blissing out. You know, samadhi's not a bad thing, you know. I mean, give it a try. So that's fine, but if I have work to do, it's a gift.
Okay, thanks, Lee.
You betcha, thank you.
Lee, this is Jim.
Jim, hi.
Hi. I'm feeling pretty spiritually weak
Speak up a little, please.
just for the last week, or actually, in fact,
Jim, it's difficult hearing you. Speak up, please.
Okay, I've been feeling pretty spiritually weak for the last week, and I know exactly what it is. I have given myself my power to another person, and what he does or does not do dictates how I feel, good or bad, and I'm just feeling really absolutely powerless. And I don't know if being on your list maybe would help, but I just want to, I want to get out of this. I want to raise myself higher than...
Yeah, ask for help. You got it.
I'm asking for help.
Got it. You're on the list. Well.
Okay, thank you.
You betcha. That's the thing to do, is when you need a lift, ask for a lift.
Yeah.
You don't need to be physically sick. If you need to be lifted, ask for a lift.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, this is Dulcie.
Hi, Dulce.
Hi, great class. Is people on the list?
People, yeah, somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't hear it, but it's probably there somewhere, because that's what I find is you know, if I'm anxious or reacting, it's that I've given a person power.
Yeah, I have people in positions, but just people in general, just people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just people in, well, a person or a group of people. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. People in general. I had people in positions like authority figures, but you know, significant others or insignificant others, or we give our power to everybody we can. Good.
Right, and what we call our needle is always someone we've given power to.
Good point. Yeah, needles have power, don't they?
Yeah. We think.
Yep.
Good class, by the way. Really good class.
Thank you. I'm glad you're with us tonight. I got the tapes today, by the way. Thank you.
You got the attachments?
Yeah, the box of tapes and book got here today.
Oh, good. Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll start on the herb tapes tomorrow. I need some new herb. Thank you.
Good. Great.
So we had God and we had people, and what was the other one that we just had that goes on the list?
Time and space.
Time and space. Yeah, I thought about that. I don't know, do you think space has power, or time has power? I think it's things in time and space. I don't have any sense that time itself has power, except in the sense that I've put in here already about aging. We think the calendar has power. In the sense of growing older.
I was thinking more in terms of there's not enough time.
Ah.
Scheduling.
Yeah, we'll get there next week. Next week is limitations. Not enough time.
You were talking last time about an experience or the exercise of not making the decision to get out of bed and then find yourself in the bathroom brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
I was at the dentist this last week, and which is always an interesting and great opportunity to meditate on the body and me not being in the body while I'm there with my mouth open and getting poked. Anyways, on the way back, I had this experience where all of a sudden I realized I had absolutely no human conscious recollection of the last, and I don't know how much time it was. I was driving on the freeway, and I have really no idea whether it was 5 seconds or 5 minutes, what was happening, how fast I was going, whatever. It was just a complete a lack of experience of time and space.
Yeah,
Which was really, really fun.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, I've had that. Because there isn't any. The phenomenal thing is that sometimes we do experience it, not that we don't. Well, we've gone for over an hour. Maybe we should get quiet for a couple of minutes now and put this to bed. Unless anybody has anything hot and quick. Okay, everybody, thanks for coming. I love you all. Hope to see you next week. Good night.